Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 26, 2024 Select Board meeting. We'll call the meeting to order at 7:02. Before we get going, I just want to point out that this meeting is being recorded and it will be rebroadcast by Canton Community TV at a later date. Unfortunately, Select Board Member John Conley will not be able to join us tonight, so we are running just the four of us. And I am going to take an agenda item out of order. We will still have the public comment period, but our Board of Assessors is meeting and they are first on the agenda. So just in the interest of getting them home for the evening, we're going to start with the Board of Assessors. So Mr. Albert.
All right, so first we got a clarification hearing with the Board of Assessors to determine the percentage of each class of property for fiscal 2025. So the Town of Canton Public Legal Notice. This notice is hereby given to the Canton Select Board will hold a public hearing beginning on or after approximately, well, we're going to have it at around 7:04, but on or after 7:05 on Tuesday, November 26, 2024. You can get on this via Zoom. And so now I'm going to I move that the board open this public hearing on the classification of the properties for fiscal 2025.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, and we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Albert?
Yes.
Ms. Boyden?
Yes.
Mr. McCourt?
Yes.
The chair as well, 4-0. The public hearing is now open. So joining us via Zoom is the Board of Assessors. They were already in an open meeting and they're joining us to make their recommendations. So I will defer to the chair of the Board of Assessors, Mr. William Galvin. Good evening.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I'm here with fellow members Gene Mannon and Rocco DiGirolamo. We had our classification meeting today. And let me just give you some notes, a little background of our situation here in Canton. The median single-family assessment is $819,300, which is a 3.94% increase from last year. The median single-family tax bill will increase $245 from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25. The median condominium assessment is $444,200, which is a 3.96% increase from last year. And the median condominium tax bill will increase $133 from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25. Commercial and industrial median assessments rose 4% over last year. The total taxable valuation of the town is close to $8 billion this year. The town has The town has increased in value by more than $358 million this year. And we were excited. New growth this year is 1,495,530. So tonight, the assessors are recommending a shift of 1.6455, which would make the residential factor 0.795935 for this year. This recommendation will make the residential tax rate $9.89, and the commercial tax rate at $20.45. Last year, the rates were $9.97 for the residential tax rate and $20.80 for the commercial rate. The residential tax rate will decrease by 9 cents and the commercial tax rate will decrease by 35 cents. Just to give you a couple of facts, the largest personal property taxpayer is Eversource, with a bill of $3,677,007.75 in taxes. And the largest commercial real estate taxpayer is 555 TNPK 74, which is basically DXL up on Route 138. And their taxes are $1,191,065.26 in taxes. And the largest residential real estate taxpayer is SVA Prin at $692,636.26. And that's Avalon up off Randolph Street.
Yep.
And our next revaluation is scheduled for fiscal year 2026. Now, also, we've checked around at local towns to see who has completed their evaluation to see if their tax rates were approved. And to date, we list 3 towns: Westwood, Walpole, and Milton, who was just approved today. And Milton's residential tax rate is $11.09. Walpole's is $12.83, and Westwood is $12.80. So I think that shows that the town of Canton mix of business and residential property is a very healthy mix. And we look forward to working with you, and we do make that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galvin. Any questions from the board? All right, any questions from the public? So, Ms. Sweeney, I see your hand up. I don't know if that was for public. Okay, so your hand just went down. But nobody else from the public with a question. Oh, Mr. Murphy, give us just a second. Here you go, Mr. Murphy. You should be able to talk.
Thank you. Thank you, board. Mr. Galvin, just Board of Assessors, just a quick question regarding the rate. You mentioned the other towns having the higher rate. Is that, can you make a direct comparison of that when we don't know what the value of a house, say my size is in another town? I don't know how you make that comparison. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, it is a mix. Some of them towns like Milton and Westwood, their average values might be a little higher than Canton's. And Walpole may be a little lower than Canton's. But those are the average rates that we compare locally. And
yeah, no, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Values go, they're very comparable. Milton total town value is $8,592,593,311, and Canton is $7,967,166,750. So what we do is we're just comparing the towns around us.
I got you. So you can't draw a direct correlation from the rates, because I was trying to say, okay, what is a house my size, whatever configuration valued at in Milton, that, it's not an apples to apples comparison per se, but I see what you're saying. You were just trying to do an overall town comparison. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Ms. Boyden, did you have a question?
It's per thousand, Chair, correct? I mean, isn't it when you do that? So it kind of is apples to apples, right? I mean, am I understanding that correctly? We're now going to be $9.79 per thousand on the value of our homes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Right, so
$9.89.
it is what it is. So if your house is
Yeah,
valued
they're
at
all per
something,
thousand, but he was just saying that a house in Canton if it was located in Milton, it might be worth more because of
Oh, yeah, obvi.
the
Okay,
dynamics of the towns, you know? That's what he was trying to say, that's all.
okay.
All right, any other questions from the board?
If I could, Mr. Chair, just real quick, I just want to make sure I have that residential factor down correctly. So
Okay.
you have it at 0.795935, correct? Bill?
Yes, 0.795935, correct.
Gotcha, thank you.
And then, Mr. Scollins, I see you there. I'm not putting you on the spot. I don't know if you had a comment or anything. You can simply say no. Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted the opportunity. Any other questions from the public? All right, seeing none, Mr. Albert.
So I move that the board close this public hearing.
Do I have a
So
second?
moved. A second.
Motion has been made and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
and the chair as well. The public hearing on that issue is now closed. Mr. Albert,
So I move that the board adopt a residential factor of 0.795935 for fiscal year 2025.
Second.
motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
and the chair as well, 4-0. And I did just want to clarify, Mr. Albert, you did say it correctly. But the public hearing was listed to start at 7:25 or at least approximately to
Yeah.
7:25. So
No,
we did start
Mr.
it a
Chair?
little bit. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, that this public hearing you just concluded was advertised to start at 7 PM. The water and rate sewer is 7:25. So this one.
Oh, okay.
7.
Okay. So thank you. All right.
Although yeah, all right. Great.
So this will work out well. All right. So to the Board of Assessors, thank you for your hard work. Thank you for keeping the tax rate relatively low for the services that we get. You guys do a phenomenal job. So thank you for your hard work and thank you for the recommendation.
Well, thank you for your hard work also. We do appreciate the select board and we wish you all a happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Thank you, guys. Same thing to all you guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
All right. So now we will go to public comment. So as I do before public comment every time, I will read the statement. The public comment portion of the meeting is an opportunity to listen to residents' feedback and concerns, but the public comment portion of the meeting is not meant to be a question and answer format. There will be no response to any public comment when presented. The public comment portion of the meeting is limited to 15 minutes total and up to 3 minutes per speaker. Those that wish to speak should have their first and last name displayed. I will not call on participants with incomplete or inappropriate names. Anyone who does not wish to speak or who is unable to speak due to the time limit may submit their comments in writing for the board's review and consideration. So with that being said, we will start our public comments at 7:15. And I see Miss Sweeney, Miss Brenda Sweeney has her hand up, so give us just a minute, Miss Sweeney. All right, Miss Sweeney, you are good to go. Miss Sweeney, can you hear us? At this time, we can't hear you, Miss Sweeney. I don't know if you can send a chat if you're having technical difficulties. All right, well, I don't see anybody else with their hand up for public comment. All right, so in the interest of moving on, We're going to end public comments. Ms. Sweeney, if you resolve your technical issues, certainly send us an email and we'll be happy to hear your comment. Mr. Albert.
All right, so next up we have so I don't know if I jumped the gun on that clarification hearing, if that was a public meeting or not. I apologize if I misinformed the public on that. But next up we have the town of Canton is holding a public hearing. This notice is given to the select board that will hold a public hearing beginning on or approximately 7:25 on Tuesday, November 26, 2024. Via virtual Zoom. The purpose of this hearing is to obtain public input and to hear the recommendations of the water and sewer rate policy and their consultant relative to the new water and sewer rates with implementation date proposed for either January 1st, 2025 or July 1st, 2025. The public is urged to attend and participate or send written comments to the above address. bos@town.canton.mass.us. I move that the board open the public hearing.
So, Mr. Albert, before we open it, we are a little bit early for the public hearing. So the point being that if members came specifically to look for that topic, we're a little bit early. So I am going to pivot back to Ms. Sweeney real quick. It seems that she logged in again. So we'll give her a quick opportunity to speak since she's the only
Hear me
one.
now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
Brenda Sweeney. I'm probably showing my age by saying this, but I feel like I'm living in the movie The War of the Roses. Sadly, nobody wins in the Rose family, and I'm really hoping that's not going to be the case for this town. Honestly, we're so entrenched in this war of differing opinions, it's like we're standing in quicksand, and all of us, every one of us, is slowly being sucked into that quagmire. This whole process has become counterproductive, and quite frankly, the time for a teachable moment is long since past. If we continue down this path, that quagmire will suffocate any hope of making Canton the town we want to live in and raise our families in. We need cooler heads to prevail because in reality, it doesn't matter who's to blame for this mess. It matters that we stop being a spectacle for the world's viewing pleasure. Nobody wins if we all go down in flames, and keeping things status quo means we're ignoring the fire at our very own feet. At the October 7th Audit Committee meeting, Fire Chief Roby demonstrated exactly what that cooler heads looked like. He was as cool as a cucumber and put out that fire that was simmering at the meeting. Each and every one of us can learn from his example. We all need to be Wendell Roberys for this town to succeed. My family thinks I'm crazy because my favorite song is Horse with No Name by America. Needless to say, they don't feel the love for that song, but at every cousin's weekend, they play it. They listen to it because they know I'll listen to their song no matter how I feel about it. That's called tolerance, and that's been missing in this town lately. Respect the right of each person to think and feel the way they do. To quote General George S. Patton, if everyone is thinking alike, then somebody isn't thinking. That's what we need right now, the right to think for ourselves. This total intolerance needs to be water under the bridge. Tolerance, patience, and respect. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and time will tell us everything we need to know about that, whether it's what we want to hear or not. Meanwhile, these meetings don't belong in a closet. We can agree to disagree, but we need to move forward in the process. Let's start by moving by opening the doors to the silent meeting room and start a constructive dialogue. It really does take two to tango. That means we need to cooperate in order to succeed, and we are definitely not succeeding standing in the quicksand and ignoring the fire all around us. If we continue down this path, it's truly a no-win situation for all of us. The ball's in your court, Mr. Loughran. I'm really hoping to see you at 801 Washington Street for the next select board meeting. Be the force that moves us forward, not the force that holds us back, because moving Canton forward should be everyone's agenda in this town. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sweeney. All right, so Mr. Albert, let's go to the fun run.
You want to skip over? All right. All right. So next up, we got the Canton Library is going to be holding a fun run with the start time of 9:30, ending at Memorial Hall, subject to police approval. We got I move to consider approving the application to obtain a special license to serve wine and malt beverages at a one-day event for Friends of Canton Library. Those are two different things, so we're on the same thing, but we do have Mr. Quinn here who's going to speak of it. So we're dealing with two different things we have to consider here: the fun run and a wine and malt beverages at the Canton Public Library.
All right, so let's go to Mr. Quinn and he can tell us all about it. How are you, sir?
Where was audio?
Yeah, Bill, we're having a little trouble hearing you. I hope that's not the library Wi-Fi.
Test 1, 2.
There you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
And I am not at the library, although it looks like I am, so sorry about that. So yes, thank you for giving me the moment here. I am Bill Quinn. I am currently the president of the Friends of the Library. And first, I want to thank the board for all of your support for all the other fundraising that we've been doing, both for the next chapter as well as for our usual funding for library activities. Matter of fact, we had a massive fundraiser on Sunday, which was very well attended, did very well. Ms. Boyden was actually one of our volunteers. Thank you again. So now we're moving on to planning for 2025. And our first item that we have to talk about tonight is our fun run, which we did for the first time last year. And we did that starting and ending at the library. However, with consultation with the police department, they have requested that they're fine without doing a fun run, but they've requested that we start and end it at Town Hall, because that prevents a lot of crossing of the street on a Sunday morning with church and other things going on. And so they had made the suggestion of Town Hall. We will be approaching you guys sometime next year, once our overall insurance renews, to talk about a party afterwards over at the library. But the race itself that we're looking for approvals tonight would start and end at Town Hall. And the reason why we're starting the approval process now is we need runtime. You guys like runtime. And also we're going to start reaching out to sponsors. And so we need your approval before we could do that. So that's the first item, is the fun run.
All right, let's take it as we go. So any questions for Mr. Quinn regarding the fun run? Anybody looking for free admission or anything like that? A free number to run it? All right, no takers. Mr. Albert?
So I move that the board approve the 5K fun run for Friends of the Canton Public Library on April 27th, 2025, with a start time of 9:30 a.m., starting and ending at Memorial Hall, subject to police approval.
Second,
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
aye,
We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Albert?
Yes.
Ms. Boyden?
yes,
Mr. McCourt?
Yes.
And the chair as well, 4-0. All right, Mr. Quinn?
In February, we're doing our third comedy night. We've done this 3 years in a row now. We're having two shows on Saturday, February 8th. We're not quite sure yet of the times. It's either going to be 6:30 and 8:30 or 7 and 9, but the alcohol license that we've requested covers those timeframes. It's been a very popular event. We keep our attendance down to about 80 people per show so that we don't get anywhere close to exceeding the room. Everyone is tip certified. We have been very successful the last 2 years that we've run this. Mark Riley, who has been with us the first 2 years, is coming back this year, and he's bringing with us Tony V as the second actor, actually the mainliner this year. So we're hoping to get an approval so we can start advertising that, because it is in February, which is only a few weeks away. Our insurance renews the first of the year, so we're going to be requesting this approval contingent on not only police, fire, building inspector, but also insurance. That's it.
All right, thank you. As Mr. Quinn pointed out, this has been an ongoing, this is year 3. It has been successful. We've had no issues with anybody being overserved or anything. So I think this is a great program. So, Mr. Albert.
All right, so I move that the board approve the application to obtain a special license to serve wine and malt beverages at a one-day event for Friends of the Canton Public Library Comedy Night fundraiser on February 8th, 2025, from 5:30 p.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. contingent upon police, fire, and building approval.
With a friendly amendment,
sorry.
the insurance as well.
The insurance.
Oh,
Contingent on their insurance being renewed, which obviously.
depending on, also, yeah, with their insurance being renewed.
All right,
Okay, second.
thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
the chair as well, 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Same to you. All right, now, Mr. Albert, we can start the
You
public
want to go
hearing.
back and I'll reopen it and we'll start all over?
Yeah, who is speaking on that, Charlie? Is it Randy?
Yes, myself and our consultant, Dave Fox from Reftilis, who's also a guest panelist here this evening.
Okay, all right, perfect. I just want to make sure we had everybody. All right. You're up, Mr. Albert.
All right, so right up next is a public, the town of Canton holding a public hearing legal notice. This notice is hereby given that the select board will hold a public hearing beginning on or after approximately 7:25 on Tuesday, November 26, 2024 via Zoom. The purpose of this hearing is to obtain public input and to hear the recommendations of the Water and Sewer Rate Policy Committee and their consultant relative to new water and sewer rates with implementation date proposed for either January 1st, 2025 or July 1st, 2025. The public is urged to attend and participate or send in written comments to the above address or via email at bos@town.canton.ma.us. I move that the board open the public hearing.
Second.
Second. Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I roll call vote. Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
and the chair as well. We are now open. Mr. Scollins, you want to start?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members of the Select Board and Mr. Town Administrator. The Water, Sewer, and Rate Policy Committee and our consultant, Dave Fox from Reftilis, met to review water and sewer rates, as well as some possible changes to the water rate structure. All of those recommendations were endorsed unanimously by the Water and Sewer Rate Policy Committee. However, this evening, we will only be looking for support for water and sewer rate changes effective July 1st, 2026. We do want to introduce some possible changes to water rate structure in the interests of fairness and equity. So without further ado, I will introduce Mr. Dave Fox from Reftilis, who's been working with us for a while here, and he has a presentation that he's going to walk us through.
Thank you, Randy. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. I'm going to attempt to share my screen and let's see if we have some success here.
All right, give it just a second.
You all
We
see
can
this
see it.
okay?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. All right, step one. Randy's asked me to, been in enough meetings with him that he knows that I can get a little long-winded. He's asked me to keep this as short as I possibly can, so I'm going to try to stick to that. But want to just quick overview. My name is Dave Fox. I'm a vice president with Reftilis. Been working with the town for a few years now, mostly on water and sewer rate and financial planning matters. Reftilis is the largest firm in the country, predominantly focused on those matters, and I lead our New England office based out of Natick, Massachusetts. Water and sewer rate setting is what I've spent my entire career on. So just wanted to set the stage there, and we'll get into the fun stuff. So as Randy mentioned, all that's being asked of you tonight for voting purposes is more of what I would refer to as financial sufficiency. So there are two kind of sides to a rate study. One is financial sufficiency, understanding for both the water and the sewer funds, how much revenue is being generated compared to what are the costs of the water and sewer fund today and well into the future. We typically look at about a 5-year window, ensuring that the revenues that are being brought in are financially sufficient to cover all existing costs, as well as future operating expense increases, capital related costs in terms of renewal and replacement of infrastructure, some fluctuations in MWRA costs associated with the Neponsit being down for a bit. We've baked all that in, and we need to understand how much additional revenue is necessary over a 5-year period. So that's one aspect of this, is more the financial sufficiency, which you're being asked to vote on this evening. But what I'm going to get into in the tail end of the presentation is the kind of the other side of a rate study, which is once we understand how much revenue should be generated, we can also ask the question of how should those revenues be generated. And I want to talk a bit about your current rate structure, how revenues are currently generated from residents and ratepayers, and some of the concerns we heard through the course of this project, and some potential alternatives to address some of those concerns and what those customer impacts are accordingly. So I'll start with just financial overview. Currently, in the fiscal year we're in, which will end in June 30th of 2025, both the water and sewer funds are operating in a financially self-sufficient position. That is, they're generating enough revenue to fully cover their costs in this current fiscal year. So no additional revenue is needed until July 1st of next year for fiscal year 2026. We are projecting rate increases. All we're talking about tonight is the rate increase for fiscal year 2026. Looking at July 1st, 2025, we're recommending a 5% increase on the revenue, or the revenue collected from retail rates in fiscal year 2026 for both water and sewer. And then because we have that 5-year forecast, when we're looking out 2027 and beyond, we're still every year we get through this process, the crystal ball gets a little less hazy on that upcoming fiscal year, but we are forecasting with the best information we have today between 1% and 5% increases annually from fiscal year 2027 and beyond. And like I mentioned, although the financial sufficiency, in my opinion, is paramount, ensuring that the town has enough money to run its water and sewer operations, there might be some structural and billing policy changes that you may want to consider, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Once I get to the back end of this presentation. So I wanted to show you the water financial plan without rate increases. So the columns up and down, or the bars here on this chart, are your revenue requirements or your costs for the water utility or the water fund. The line going across is your revenue under existing rates today. What you can see is for the next couple of years, we're okay, but then in 2027 and 2028, anytime this line is below the top of the bar, that is running a deficit in that year. We're not generating enough revenue to cover our costs. And then, because of this is mostly due to the Neponsit related project and some increases in MWRA costs and the capital costs associated with that, they do drop back down, but there is a period of time where we need additional revenue to be financially sufficient. A lot of times we utilize reserve fund balances to be able to offset any kind of short-term fluctuations or increases in expenses. Unfortunately, that's not the case here without rate increases. You can see we're trying to maintain an adequate fund balance for financial viability purposes, a rainy day fund, if you will, just a savings account. And without any rate increases, the chart I was showing you before, what you can see is that water fund balance goes negative, which is an unpalatable financial position for the water fund. We can't have this as the water fund being an enterprise. We need sufficient revenues coming from the water fund to fully cover those costs. The fund balance would completely go negative by the 2027, 2028 time period. This is unsustainable. So what we have forecasted is, again, a 5% increase in 2026, followed by between 1% and 5% increases in 27 through 2030 to try to get over that hump a little bit that you see there in the increase in costs in 2027 and 2028, which results in us having pretty much a maintenance of our fund balance and then start building that up over time to get up to that target. I know, just to point it out, in 2030, our fund balance is exceeding what our target is. it's still a long period of time between now and then. I don't think we want to hang our hat there. As financial plans should be updated annually. Once we get out to that point, if we are sufficiently funding that total fund balance, we would make a recommendation accordingly to mitigate any increases in the out years to ensure that we're not generating too much money. But again, I think to start us off on that path and not generate a structural deficit or get into the position where we need some sort of general fund subsidy to support the water fund, which I don't think anybody wants. We are recommending a 5% increase for fiscal year 2026, starting July 1st of next year. Very similar situation on the sewer side. For sake of time, I'm not going to ramble off the exact same talking points because it's very similar here, but you can see over the course of the entirety of the 5-year forecast, without additional rate increases on the sewer side, we would run deficits every single year. The revenues would not match or exceed the overall expenses or budgets of the sewer fund, which again would lead to starting in a little bit more positive position for fund balance on sewer, which we'd like to maintain. But with those deficits we run every year, you can see that fund balance going negative by the 2029 time period. Again, an unpalatable financial position. So with that being said, again, we're recommending a 5% increase in 2026, and then between 1 and 5% thereafter from 27 to 2030. Again, contingent upon future updates, which will allow us to keep that reserve fund balance pretty darn close to what our target is on an annual basis. The fact that we're slightly below that checkered line going across, the dotted line going across, which is the target, doesn't give me any heartburn whatsoever. We're staying very, very close to what that is. So again, for financial sufficiency purposes, taking that long-term picture, that 5-year window into consideration, the 5% increases are our recommendation for 2026. And as Randy mentioned, that is all we're asking for your approval on this evening. With that being said, though, there are some other kind of rate design or policy considerations that were brought to our attention as we were working through the course of this rate study. I want to set the stage first with just making the board, which I'm sure you're already well aware of this, but any members of the public who are listening in and aren't, the water and sewer funds have both a fixed component as well as a volumetric. All of the, or most of the issues that we're talking about stem from, or most of the issues were presented to me and complaints or concerns from residents had to do with this volumetric rate structure. So on the left portion of your screen here, you have the rates themselves broken out by water and sewer. This is what I would refer to as an inclining block rate structure. So the more that you use, the more you pay per unit of water and sewer service. So let's just look at the water, for example. For the first 1,500 cubic feet over the course of a quarter, and that is CCF, or 100 cubic feet. 100 cubic feet is about 748 gallons. So for the first 1,500 cubic feet of water, a customer would pay $5.41. If a customer goes over 1,500 cubic feet, for every 100 cubic foot up to 40, they would pay $9.69. And you can see how that would progress up to anything over 100, $20.35. Very similar structure on the sewer side. On the right portion of this chart, just to kind of put that in relative terms, you can see how much more each of those prices are per relative tier or relative block compared to that initial tier. So $9.69, the second tier of water, is 1.79 times that of our first tier, $5.41. And you can see how that ramps up pretty aggressively, not as aggressively on the sewer side, but certainly on water. This again, I wanted to set the stage because this is going to very much be the basis for some of the concerns that we heard from residents and from staff within the town as well. So those structural and policy issues that we did here, condominiums with the town are currently billed based on a policy or a methodology which I would refer to as unit averaging. So for condominiums that have a master meter, so a single meter coming onto the condominium with multiple units, that property the town takes that total property's billable consumption, divides it by the total number of units. And I have an example on the next slide, and I'll walk you through that. Takes the total billable consumption, divides it by the total number of units to get an average per unit consumption, and then runs those per unit consumptions through those tiers I was just showing you, and then aggregates the bill, and then sends the condominium a single bill with that aggregation. Apartment complexes, on the other hand, are billed without unit averaging, just based on the rate structure that I showed you previously. So all of their consumption, it doesn't get divided by the number of units. All of their consumption runs through the tiers accordingly. And I'm going to come back to this third point. I'm just going to jump to this example here because I think it's going to be helpful. This is 3 examples of an apartment complex, a condominium in the middle, and a single-family residential home. The apartment complex has 10 units within it and uses 100 CCF of consumption over the course of a quarter. The condominium also has 10 units and also uses 100 CCF of consumption. If we look at the apartment complex, you can see how the 100 CCF, or those 100 units of water, are allocated or distributed to the tiers. So the first 15 are charged at $5.41. The next 25 are charged at $9.69, and then the next 60 are charged at $16.05, creating a total water volumetric component of that bill of $1,286. If we break that down on a per CCF price paid for water, that's $12.86, because the vast majority of that consumption is being billed at this $16.05, and very little of it being billed at the lower price tiers. If we take that same example, very similar property type, a condominium instead of an apartment that uses 100 CCF and has 10 units, that 10, you take the 100, divide it by 10 to arrive at 10 CCF per unit. That gets billed at just $5.41, so $54.10, and then multiplied by the number of units in the condominium. So that total bill that would be sent to a condominium using the exact same amount of water with the exact same number of units would be $541, rather than what the apartment would pay of $1,286, resulting in a per unit or a per CCF price paid for water of $5.41 compared to $12.86. And if we compare that against a single family home, just one unit using 10 CCF, which is equivalent to one of the units in both the apartment and condominium, you can see that per price paid is identical to the per price paid as the condominium. The apartment complex is paying significantly more because of the policy decision of billing them differently than the condominiums. One other thing I want to point out, and just moving back here, is my third point, but I thought it was helpful to go to that example, is that the current tier cutoffs are providing a lower per unit rate for a typical single family residential customer that uses about 13 CCF per quarter, some of which might be economically disadvantaged or low income customers. But there are inevitably low income customers or low income residents in the town that are using higher than average or higher than typical consumption, maybe in the 20 CCF range. And when we look at that very similar structure here, very similar example, that typical volume single family residential using 13 CCF, which is right about the median of consumption within the town, paying $70.33 for 13 CCF, but more importantly, that price per paid, because they're staying within that first tier of $5.41 per unit. Whereas a 20 CCF, a higher volume single family residential customer, because 5 of their units go into that second tier, they're paying $6.48 on average per unit compared to the $5.41. And the reason I'm bringing this up is one of the concerns that was conveyed to me as we were going through the rate study and thinking about potential alternatives or structural changes that we could make was, what about those low income homes that are using a little bit more than what the typical is? And a lot of times there's an incorrect correlation between low income and low volume or low usage. It's not necessarily the case. We've actually been able to cross-reference income data with consumption data, and what we see a lot of times is that those low income customers are using actually slightly higher on a per unit base, or slightly higher on average their consumption than a low income household. There could be some reasons for that, overpopulated households, or homes that haven't been retrofitted with high efficiency fixtures like low flow toilets, low flow shower heads, older homes that have leaky pipes and leaky fixtures, and just by nature of that, using more water. So one of the things we thought about was, could we potentially expand this tier cutoff from 15 to 20 to be able to offset and be able to provide a little bit more relief or a lower volumetric rate for a greater population of the households within the town. So the potential solutions I'm going to walk you through, and then I'm going to walk you through some examples or customer impacts of how, if we implemented some of these solutions, how bills would change for different customer types. Is the number one is, if you were to adopt that unit averaging that you're currently employing for condominiums, if you also employed that for apartment complexes. We also have a potential solution or alternative where, doing what I just said, you're expanding the tier cutoff from 15 CCF to 20 CCF to try to encompass more single-family residential homes within the town, and really everyone, because they're all paying the same rate structure, is benefiting from a little bit more in that lowest price tier. And then something to try to offset the impacts of doing really the unit averaging on the residential properties is being a little bit more aggressive in the irrigation pricing. So right now, the pricing for irrigation goes through a very similar inclining block rate structure. It doesn't have that lowest per unit rate, but it starts at the second, so it still increases over time. Instead of having an inclining block where you're paying more per unit, setting the volumetric rate for irrigation at the highest price tier, reflecting that is non-essential usage, reflecting the additional costs associated with providing irrigation service, the extra capacity necessary to be able to do that, the electricity, pumping, all the costs associated with being able to provide additional service for irrigation. It's more reflective of a higher price tier than giving them a lower price for a certain amount. And then also, irrigation customers pay a fraction of the fixed charges, which I know we've mostly been talking about volumetric charges to this point in this conversation, but there is a fixed charge component, not contingent upon how much a customer's using, but more based on the meter, the size of the meter on the property, which are very common. The vast majority of utilities across the country, both water and sewer, have some sort of fixed charge and scale that fixed charge by meter size. But irrigation customers are paying a fraction for an irrigation meter compared to what just a domestic single-family residential home is paying for their meter on a quarterly basis. And we're also recommending, or at least maybe not recommending, but providing to you as a potential alternative, is to charge irrigation customers the same fixed charges as you're charging for all meters within the system. So I know I'm getting a little long-winded here. I appreciate your patience. I'm going to try to just get through this pretty quickly. So on the next few screens, I'm going to show you those different customer impacts. I'm going to break it out by different customer types. We're going to see what that customer type is paying today under existing rates, what they would be paying in fiscal year 2026 if you made no structural changes that we had just talked about, and you only increase both the water and sewer rates by 5%. You're going to see what that customer would pay under what I'm referring to as alternative one, which is all these alternatives are revenue neutral. We're generating 5% more revenue. So we're going to get 5% more revenue in alternative one, but we would adopt the unit averaging for apartments at just like you're doing currently for condominiums. And then also expand that tier one cutoff from 15 CCF to 20 CCF. And then alternative two is doing everything that alternative one is doing, but is also implementing the irrigation changes that I just talked about. And you'll see why how that's going to have a meaningful impact on some customers. So we'll first look at a typical residential customer. Currently, this typical residential customer is paying $832 per year for both water and sewer service. With a status quo, no rate structural changes, with just a 5% increase for both water and sewer, that same customer's bill would increase by about $41 from $832 to $873, which is exactly a 5% increase, a $41 per year increase. If we implemented only the unit averaging and expanding the first tier cutoff from 15 to 20, that same customer's bill, instead of increasing to $873, would increase to $911, or about a $79 increase, or about 9%. So 4% more than what would be just across the board. But if we also implement the irrigation changes that I was referring to, we're basically keeping that same customer's bill as it would be under alternative two, as it would be under the status quo, just the across the board increase, approximately a 5% increase for both water and sewer, or about a $43 per year increase instead of what the status quo is of $41. So very, very similar to the just kind of across the board status quo, but it requires that irrigation on top of it. Otherwise, your typical single family home, which is making up the vast majority of your customer base, is going to see a 9% increase rather than a 5%. And that is predominantly due to the change of allowing for unit averaging for apartment complexes and not just condominiums. If we look at a high volume residential customer, again, that status quo fiscal year 2026 going up by 5% or about $67 per year. An alternative one would only be about a 1% increase, or about $7. And an alternative two, because we're getting the irrigation as well as the compounding effect of expanding that tier cutoff from 15 to 20. So we're losing that. This customer is right at that 20 CCF mark. They're losing that additional 5 CCF that would have been priced at the higher price tier. So their bill would actually come down slightly by about 3% or $42. But all very, very similar for this high volume residential customer. Here's where the biggest impact, or one of the biggest impact occurs. This is the biggest increase. So when I'm going to talk about an apartment complex, I'm going to show you the biggest decrease. An example irrigation customer, again, a 5% increase with this status quo, going up about $29 per billing period. If we were to do the alternative one, the unit averaging for apartments, and expand the tier cutoff, an irrigation customer's bill would increase by about $15. Or 15% or $87 over the period of time in which they're using, which is, a portion of the year. This is, could think about annually, but they're not using irrigation throughout the entirety of the year. And then alternative two is where we see the biggest impact, because we're charging all of this consumption at the highest price tier. We're also implementing a fixed charge that is commensurate or equal to a retail domestic fixed charge. This irrigation customer's bill would increase by 87% or about $504, from $579 up to $1,083. So this is the most meaningful impact. And because those irrigation customers are paying more, that's why you can see for that typical residential customer, their bill decrease from what would be a 9% down to a 5%. We're getting additional revenue from those irrigation customers and allowing us to bring it back down to more of the status quo, that across the board 5% increase. And then finally, if we look at an example apartment, with a 5% increase, that apartment would increase by approximately $2,700, going from about $55,000 to about $58,000. With both alternative one and two, it doesn't really make a huge difference for this customer, but it's meaningfully reducing the impact or reducing the bill for these apartment complexes in the magnitude of about $30,000 per year of excess of 50% decrease in their bill. And this is predominantly or entirely due to utilizing the unit averaging and keeping the vast majority of the consumption, if not in most cases, all of the consumption at that lowest price tier, rather than having the vast majority of their consumption go to the higher price tiers, which you saw earlier in my example. With that being said, I know I probably went a little over. Sorry about that, Randy. Did my best. I'll entertain any discussions or questions you have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. So, Ms. Boyden, I see your hand up. We'll go to you first. You're on mute, dear.
Okay. Hi there. Is it David, did you say? Yes. Yeah, so unit averaging for apartments like condos to me makes sense. You're talking about different socioeconomic levels, and I'm going to guess that people who live in apartments can't afford condos, and certainly not single family homes. And it seems ludicrous that they're getting absolutely raped with some of the prices that they're paying. When you average it, I did door knocking at Windsor Woods in Canton when I was running for election last spring, and there were lots of older women who asked me why they paid such high water bills, and I didn't have an answer for them. I didn't know until tonight, so thank you for explaining unit averaging versus not. And so alternative one seems to be reasonable. I think folks like me and others who have single family homes can certainly pay whatever the difference is. For folks who live in apartments and are definitely on fixed incomes and in all sorts of financial straits, It just seems horrible to have them not do this unit averaging. So they get rooked. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. I'm for alternative one all the way.
Thank you, Ms. Boyden. So just to clarify for the board, what is before us tonight is a rate increase, and the alternatives we're going to take under advisement. It's not
Gotcha.
something we're voting on tonight. But if we have questions for Mr. Fox or Mr. Scollins, this would be a good opportunity. So, Mr. Albert, Mr. McCourt, any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just on the apartment complex, again, I agree with Select Board Member Boyden on the differential from condos and apartments. However, the apartment renter doesn't actually get a water bill. It's from the apartment complex itself, I believe. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
The actual residents wouldn't get a bill for water.
In some instances, they could, but they would not receive a bill directly from the town. So the mechanism in which a resident or a tenant within an apartment complex could see a bill is if the apartment complex had sub-meters. So that is the individual units were metered such that, and there's also some other things under Mass General Law, like conservation measures that the apartment needs to take into consideration or accomplish, but mostly the sub-metering. So the apartment complex can proportionally distribute out the bill that the town sends them to its tenants proportionally based on the amount that each unit used. Right. So if a unit uses more water consumption, it has 5 people living in it compared to somebody just living by themselves, that 5-person unit is probably using more water, and it allows them to distribute that out. And they're actually allowed to provide them a bill that then would be paid to the apartment complex, but it is not the tenant paying the town directly.
Right. So that's my only, I think we should, I believe in the that unit averaging, I do, but I would just want to see the tenants have that savings. I would like to see that either in a rent reduction and or a bill reduction, but I don't know how that could be accomplished.
If I could,
Different. How would that be accomplished for a savings for the renter? If it goes to the apartment complex and they say, hey, we're saving 20,000 a year now, and it doesn't trickle down, it's kind of going to do something for the apartment rentals, and it's not going to see their pocketbook. So that's a concern I have that we have to kind of address. Thank you.
Randy, do you want to address that, or you want me to jump in?
I was going to speak to it.
Okay.
So that's what we wrestled with as a committee. And in essence, we came to an understanding that the reason likely for the current billing policy with apartment complexes was the assumption that we may just be lining the pockets of apartment complex owners, because there wouldn't necessarily be a guarantee that the savings would get passed back to the tenants. But after discussing that pretty thoroughly, we landed in a different place because we're living in different times. And where we landed was we didn't think it was appropriate for the town to enable that, to be, in essence, part of the problem. So if the town, in essence, did, to use certain words, the right thing, to bill similarly for, similar units, then it would really be on the apartment complex owner to do the right thing, understanding that they can increase rents outside of water bills. But as you could see, these would be substantial savings. And there is a law that requires, if the water bill is discernible, that they don't overbill the tenant for a water bill that's identifiable with a unit. So regardless of whether or not the apartment complex owner is going to pass that along, we thought it was important for the board to consider that we enable a process whereby they could do that rather than where they wouldn't do that.
Ms. Boyden?
So thank you, JR, and thank you, Randy, for explaining that. Thank you, JR, for also supporting that. So yeah, if we said we wanted, I know this is not for right now, Mike, but if we decided to go ahead and say, let's do unit and they do the right thing, is there a way we police them in this town, or is there a way we can say, based on what we're doing now, you all are, you have to drop the charges for the your tenants in terms of the water rates? If I'm saying that right.
Dave, you want to take that?
I don't know of any mechanism that the town could employ, but that's certainly outside of my area of expertise in that regard. But in terms of rent control mechanisms or ensuring that savings are passed down, I know under Mass General Law, if the properties are submetered and those bills are being passed down directly to, instead of being recuperated through rent, if they're being passed down in the example that I shared before of distributing or proportionately to the tenants, they are not allowed to mark up those bills for any administrative markup or anything else. They have to distribute them based on the way that the town sends them those bills. So as Randy mentioned, you know, the committee did debate this for a long period of time. I thought it was a great discussion. And I don't know that the formal, you know, if there is an enforcement mechanism or if the town can even do that. And if the answer is they can't, I kind of just err on the side of agreeing with Randy and the committee that, you know, the town wouldn't want to, even though they can't guarantee, or we might be making a poor assumption that every landlord is benevolent and is going to do the right thing, but at least the town would know that they're not doing anything to contribute to the problem.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, one more question if I could.
Go ahead.
With the 5% that we're talking about for this current fiscal year 2026, I believe, Randy, is this the 5%?
Correct. Yes.
For July 1st. 2 years ago, I believe it was, we had a real large increase in the water rate. I believe it was close to 27%, if I'm correct. And that was due to COVID in the previous years where there was absolutely no increase due to those years, I believe. And there was a couple of years that got skipped or for whatever. I believe the 5% is a good idea to do this time so that we don't get into that. I mean, if it's 5% this year, in the next couple of years, 2 or 3%, I think a gradual increase is a lot more easier for a homeowner to handle than coming down 5 years down the line and having a big increase because we didn't forecast what it is. So I think the 5% at this point for 2026 would be doable for most people. Thank you.
Right. Ms. Boyden, do you still have a question?
I do. Let me lower my hand. Through you, Chair. So Dave, I have no doubt that landlords are benevolent or not benevolent. I'm going to guess not so much. So just so you know.
I probably would agree.
And I'm down with JR's 5% and doing it gradually. So yeah.
All right. So this board is definitely going to bring this topic up again at a future meeting where we can discuss these alternatives and potential long-term impacts. But for now, we've just been asked to vote on the rate increase for FY26. So, Mr. Albert?
So I move that the board close this public hearing.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to close the public hearing. All those, I'm sorry. Mr. Birmingham, I apologize. I saw your hand at the last second. I actually saw it because you took it off. So just unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Very quickly, Mr. Scollins, Mr. Fox, thank you very much. As a former Department of Public Utilities employee and a longtime utility employee, I appreciate the rate design challenges. Two questions just to ask very quickly. Mr. Scollins, did the Water Sewer Rate Policy Committee take a vote yet on the alternative rate structures, or that's just been discussed?
No, the committee did vote to support all three of the rate structure changes that were recommended.
Okay. Is there a rate setting guidelines that the commission or committee is using to help guide the decision making? For example, at the Department of Public Utilities, we had 7 rate design goals, one of which was to mitigate rate shock. And full transparency, I am a second meter outdoor water metering customer. That is a very significant increase in a 1-year jump that I would constitute or clarify or comment on that constitutes rate shock in terms of a percentage of rate increase for those water used under that second meter. Any alternative discussion on how to mitigate, if it's a policy to move forward, that's one thing. If it's a policy to mitigate that over time, that's a different thing. That's what I'm wondering, if there's any run room to discuss ways to mitigate the rate shock for the second meter customers.
Tom, just to take your first point, I mean, the overarching goals of the water enterprise are to reduce its reliance on borrowing for the extensive investment that is being made continually in the infrastructure. Currently, we borrow close to 100% for those investments, and the goal is to get to a 50-50 mix of debt and cash, and that's why our target of 180 days of expenses for reserve levels, so we would have those reserves to tap into for these major investments, rather than all the borrowing, which is having a circular effect on driving up rates. So that's a general framework that is driving the financial side of this. I don't know, Dave, if you wanted to address Tom's second point.
Sure. I'm not part of the committee, Tom, but the committee did have lengthy discussions, mainly because I pointed out immediately in that chart that you're referring to is pretty glaring in terms of a meaningful increase on the irrigation accounts. We did have a discussion about potential ways to mitigate that or phase that in over time. Instead of inundating the board, which I think I did a bit this evening, even though I didn't mean to, with a million different options, we want to kind of just show, just a bracketed assumption of what the impact would be on a typical residential customer, for example, without the irrigation changes, of about a 9% increase versus what it would be if you went full bore. And I'm not saying that absolutely should go there, because I agree with you, that is a meaningful increase, and you could certainly categorize that as rate shock. But wanted to show that bracketed assumption, and if it is a policy decision to mitigate that increase on irrigation, but wanted to move in that direction, it would be quite easy, and we do this very often, of phasing in changes rather than allowing for a rip the Band-Aid off approach, is maybe the way to say it.
Great, thank you. And Randy, if I could just pass on that request to the Water Sewer Rate Policy Committee to consider that way to mitigate the significant rate increase for irrigation customers, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Will do. Thanks, Tom.
We have one more comment from the public, Ms. Diane Costa. So Ms. Costa, give us just a second to unmute you. There you are, ma'am. You should be able to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Diane Costa, 104 Revere Street. As an apartment dweller for several years now with a sub-metered water bill, I have been getting astronomical bills for all these years. and would love to see you do this appropriately for the apartment owners, apartment dwellers. And I was wondering when this would happen. Could this still happen for next July 1st? Or is this too far in the future, at least adjusting for the apartment owners?
Mr.
So,
Chair.
yeah. If you're asking when will the select board decide on the, one of these alternatives, and if we did decide, would that be implemented for FY 26? Is that your question?
Yes, that's my question.
Okay, so the alternatives, this is really the first time that we're seeing this. We knew the rate increase was being discussed. So the board will definitely be bringing this up at a very near meeting and discussing in a little bit more detail. And then we would take a position then.
Okay, so it is still possible that could happen for July 1st?
Yes.
Okay, I'd love to see that happen.
Okay, thank you. All right. Seeing no other questions. Yep. No other questions. Yep. Okay, so seeing no other questions, Mr. Albert?
So I move that the board close this public hearing.
Second,
Motion has been made and seconded to close the public hearing at 8:12. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
aye,
And we will do a roll call vote. Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
yes,
and the chair as well, 4-0. All right, Mr. Albert?
All right, so I move that effective with the July 2025 billing cycle, that all town of Canton water rates be increased by 5%, and also that the town of Canton sewer rates be increased by 5%.
second,
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 aye,
We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
yes,
the chair as well, 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Fox. Thank you, Mr. Scollins.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Pleasure.
thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you,
Thank
you
you.
as well. Sir.
You too.
All right, Mr. Albert.
All right, next up is discussion regarding Veteran Department and Home Depot's partnership with the Wreath Tree Project. And Arafat Knight, our veteran agent, who does a wonderful job, should be joining us. I think he's here.
All right,
We made him wait a long time.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm just here to make you guys aware of, as you guys know, the last year I've been teaming up with the Home Depot store in Norwood, and they've been doing a lot of great things through for the American Legion as well for the veterans in the community, and that's now going to continue. Using the American Legion as a home port. What they have agreed to is a $12,000 project where they're going to be donating 600 wreaths and 1,000 little trees. On December 17th, I'm going to meet with volunteers from them, members from the National Charity League, people from the St. Oscar Romero Church, as well as volunteers in the community. And we're going to be going around both St. Mary's and Canton Corner and placing the wreaths and the trees on the graves of veterans, which is something the town has never done. So I'm excited about this project. The plan is, once the holiday season is over, to then open up the trees to the families of veterans so they can take them home and plant them, and whatever is remaining, working with DPW to get those trees planted in the community.
well, that's fantastic. Did you say that was on the 17th, Wednesday?
Yeah, December 17th, I believe it's actually, no, hold on, let me double check my calendar. Yeah, December 17th, which is a Tuesday.
Tuesday.
We're going to be meeting up at 10 o'clock at the memorial site, and dispersing there to both cemeteries to plant the wreaths and the trees.
All right. Well, Home Depot did a great job, as did you and Cindy, on getting the American Legion rehabbed. So I'm glad that partnership is continuing and that they're looking to help out with this. This is a great idea, and I agree, it's never been done before. So you continue to amaze us with thinking outside the box on these things.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for our VSO?
thank you, Arafat.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Just keep up the great work.
All right. Do we need a motion for that? I don't even think that we do.
I think so.
No, I
No,
think it's just,
yeah. So, let us know if you need help.
All right, I will.
My calendar.
Thanks
Thank
very
you
much.
all.
Thank you.
All
You
right.
all have a great
Arafat.
thanks. Have a great
Thanks,
Thanksgiving.
Pat.
You too,
Thanks, you
Al.
you
too.
too, Arafat.
All right. Next, Mr. Albert.
All right, next up is Mr. Birmingham is going to be coming back to discuss some climate-related issues in anticipation of the special town meeting. Not special, I'm sorry, the annual town meeting 2025.
All right. Mr. Birmingham.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Water sewer took a lot of your time.
No problem. It was a good discussion,
Yeah.
good presentation. I appreciated it, at least being a former rate guy. Mr. Chair, would you like me to be the driver on the slides?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. I've gotten a little streamlined version from the version that I sent out as part of the package. So I will show the most current version, which is just really for the most part, it's the same as what you've seen, just a little streamlined. I addressed a couple of questions that I've gotten since I sent that in. So let me just, and I do have to share my screen. Is that correct first?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Bear with me one sec. Okay, hopefully you can see that all now.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic.
Yep.
All right, so very quickly, good news is there's a lot of good positive actions that have developed over the last several weeks, months since I last presented to you all, that I wanted to share with you tonight. The bad news is I don't have enough time to get into a lot of these items in any detail. So if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, what I'd like to do is just give you a very high-level overview of what it is that we've done and what we have left to do, and basically tee up some of the issues for the select board to consider, and then plan on coming back to you in, I think it's December 17th is the next select board meeting, and then get into some decision making. So tonight is more informational and overview, and let you all ask any questions that you have of me, and then we'll get into more of the decision making phase in December. Is that okay with you, Mr. Chair?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. So what we're going to try to cover tonight is at very high levels, purpose, background, status update, and some emerging issues. And then there are a few slides towards the back of the presentation for your consideration in the future. I would just qualify this whole presentation as saying this whole topic is very fluid. For example, the governor just signed two major bills last week, one on climate omnibus bill and another on economic development, that will have an impact on our eventual climate action plan and the strategy and the direction that we recommend to the select board. So we'll continue to kind of closely monitor this and keep you updated as things change. But for tonight, this is what we got current status. Okay, just very quickly, as you may recall, this was coming out of our mission for the Climate Action, Sustainability and Climate Action Plan Committee. Came out of the 2023 annual town meeting warrant article 27 to do three things: develop a plan, initiate possible establishment of a new town sustainability climate manager or related position, and initiate the process to identify applicable funding and other responsible economic growth opportunities. So that's what we're trying to get done with the committee. Okay. What we're now into is phase 3. As you may recall, we've completed phase 1, which is the research and analysis phase. We've wrapped up our public engagement phase, and now we're moving into our planning, drafting, and review phase. That is why I'm coming before you for some thoughts and considerations on the plan itself and next steps regarding annual town meeting. For those of you that aren't familiar, the scope of our climate action plan covers 8 major areas. If you start at 12 o'clock on the top center, we start with energy. That's the first one. Built environment, critical infrastructure, mobility, transportation, waste, natural resources, public health and resilience, and climate education. Those 8 themes, categories, are things that we've seen that are captured in our own open space plan, our MVP plan, our master plan. They're also covered in a lot of other benchmarking plans that we've assessed. And this makes a lot of sense to our third-party consultant who's helping us with the planning process. So that's just kind of the scope. As a result of that pretty large scope, it drives us into a lot of different departments and committees that are already dealing with some of these issues. What I hope, at getting a little ahead of myself, but what I hope to see us do is rationalize a lot of the different recommendations and actions that we recommend in the future, consistent with what the town's already decided to do, but may not have the funding identified yet, might not have the governance structure to see it through. So that's kind of an overview of the 8 areas that we're working with for the plan once we get that ready for publication. A little more detail very quickly on phase 1. We've identified some key data and opportunities. You can read this at your leisure. For sake of time, I'll just blaze through these. Item number 2, the public engagement. Just good thing to point out, and this number is actually a little low. We received over 350 surveys from the general public to help inform us. We've had some excellent meetings with our own committee members. We've met with 18 town employees, and we've just wrapped up a public awareness and education campaign. And we're also, a big important thing for me and the committee is we've also identified some interesting green tech, clean tech, economic development opportunities that we think we're going to include into the climate plan. Okay, so this is the quick high-level timeline to try to get us ready for annual town meeting. As you all know, we have to have the warrant articles drafted by January 3rd. That gives us between now and then to sort of get guidance and decisions from the select board on what you think would be appropriate and reasonable to include in the annual, for the annual town meeting in the articles to vote on. So this is a quick timeline to get us from current state to we have, drafted articles that are going to be reviewed after January 3rd by the Finance Committee and the rest of the annual, the warrant process. So we're compiling the draft cap. Right now, tonight I'm debriefing you and on some of the key issues. Week of the 12th, the 9th of October, we're meeting with Assistant Town Administrator to start working on draft articles. Mr. Scollins, I hope to meet with him as well to talk about the budget and some funding opportunities that I'll get into in a minute or two. Week of the 16th of December, I plan to come back. We hope to have a little more clarity on the kinds of interim proposal. We won't have the draft report completed probably until after the 30th of December. That's the way it looks right now. So we're thinking about maybe an interim report to give you, to let us fit inside the current window to make the warrant on some requests for town approval, with the expectation that a future final report will be issued after the warrant closes. That's a quick overview of the timeline. Hopefully that all makes sense to you. If anybody has any questions as I go through this, please feel free to just raise your hand so I notice the pause, but I'll keep plowing through. Okay, some very interesting emerging issues that are coming up. This is a list of 6 that we've been able to identify so far. Very excited to say we've identified a very favorable grant that is coming through Mass Save to allow municipalities to hire an energy sustainability manager. I'll give you some more detail on what that grant looks like. The Climate Leader Community Certification is another sort of policy goal that the state is pushing down into the municipalities. We wanted to brief you on that very quickly. Couple of quick highlights on our meetings with Department of Public Works, Central Facilities, and Department of Public Health. How can we best support and coordinate with their existing efforts? The CAP-related governance structure for the committee. I've got some ideas to share with you tonight that will give you some, food for thought of what this might look like. As you may know, this is an interim steering committee. We're not a permanent committee, the Climate Action Plan Committee. So at some point, we're going to have to figure out a more permanent solution. Our goal is to put the plan forward, but not necessarily implement it. So we have to talk about that. MVP 2.0, that's the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Planning Opportunity. They have a new grant that is, the deadline is closing pretty rapidly. So I wanted to tee that up to see if that made sense to pursue that or not, given the tight deadline. And then there's a number of different funding options that we've identified that we don't really have to get into today. And there's a lot more coming through these new 2 pieces of legislation I referred to. So that's what I wanted to cover as some of the emerging issues. Very quickly, you all have this basic version of this deck. And I can share with you a newer one for the preparation of the 17th, but very quickly, the Energy Sustainability Manager grant application. The deadline is January 31st of next year. Funding through Mass Save via Eversource and National Grid. The maximum funding is up to $120,000 a year for 3 years. It's intended to pay for salary and benefits, not for office, computer, other costs. So it's an incredible opportunity. We've gone through an open office, asked a lot of questions about it. The people that are in charge of this are telling us Canton is a good candidate for this. So right now, as it stands, I think this is a great opportunity for us to go for. I don't have to ask you for permission to do that yet, because the deadline's later in January, but I think I'm going to come back and ask you if that's okay to pursue this, subject to a little more fact-finding that we want to complete. So that's that one with some questions for you to consider. I won't go into those tonight, if that's okay, Mr. Chair, just for sake of time.
Sure.
Okay, a little more detail. This is a pretty heavy, busy slide. The takeaway from this is to go from what essentially is, Canton's a green community right now. We'll call that green community 1.0. The state has recognized that we've got to go to green community 2.0. And this is what the criteria are to meet the green community 2.0 threshold. There's 6 criteria. The first one is remain a green community in good standing. We qualify. The second is you have to have a local committee. We already have one now. As you know, I'm representing our committee today. We would have to vote at some point to extend that, or change it from planning to implementation committee. But I don't think that would be a problem. 3, 4, 5, and 6 have some more weight to them. The municipal decarbonization commitment. The state is asking every municipality to set a net zero target. What that means is to reduce our carbon emissions to basically a net zero by 2050. And other interim targets 2030 and 2040. What I heard today at a very interesting discussion by the state is how they're going to help the municipalities fund that. So a lot more to go on that over the next couple weeks, and I'll be able to give you some more information on that. But at some point, we anticipate the committee is going to be asking the select board to support a decarbonization commitment on behalf of the town of Canton. The roadmap, item 4, is the plan on how do you reach that. And that's going to be part of what we would propose in the plan itself. We're working with a consultant. Once we get comfortable setting the targets, then the consultant's going to work with us on how do we achieve those targets, how much would they cost, what are the benefits associated with those targets, and when would they happen. So a lot more to come on that. Zero emissions vehicle first policy, when feasible and practical. Talk to the Department of Public Works as an example. Doesn't really make sense right now to go for plows, electric plows. Don't know how long the batteries have to last, don't have the charging infrastructure in place right now. So that wouldn't be feasible today, but it might be feasible to purchase Ford F-150 pickup trucks or something along those lines. Currently, Canton has a request for fuel efficiency considerations when they're buying new vehicles. This would be a little higher standard than just fuel efficiency. Finally, the last 6 is a specialized stretch energy code. This takes Canton to that next level of energy code. That definitely requires annual town approval. We've talked to the town administrator, building inspector. They're both open to considering it, but they had some questions. And it would be on our shoulders as a committee to bring some more explanation and understanding of what this would mean for the town. We need to do some more outreach with the business communities that would be impacted, the building community, and make sure that people understand what this means for the town of Canton, its residents, and its businesses. So very quick overview of those 6 key elements of what it would take to become a climate leader community. I will add, just as a footnote, an important one. The funding sources to do this are really becoming more clear as a result of these most recent pieces of legislation and some other federal funding. I will raise these issues with Mr. Scollins when we have a chance to discuss. There's some really interesting funding options for the towns, and I look forward to sharing those with Mrs. Scollins and the select board on the 17th. Okay, let me just kind of pick up the pace a little bit. We've had, as I mentioned, some really good discussions. I'll call them preliminary with Department of Works, Central Facilities, Board of Health. They're doing a lot of great stuff already. We think we can supplement and support what they're trying to do by finding funding and, helping prioritize and supporting public campaigns to help the general public understand what it is that the departments are trying to accomplish and the select board's trying to accomplish, and just basically be an extra set of eyes and ears to support the good work that's already happening and the future work that we think needs to happen in the town. So another few questions down there to consider. This is one of the slides I really try to simplify. This is the kind of go forward governance structure. Current state, we generally basically have 3 committees. The one I represent, Sustainability and Climate Action Planning Committee, that's who I'm talking on behalf of tonight. There's a separate Sustainability Committee. We've talked to them. They are in support of updating the governance structure on a go forward basis. And then, as you may know, I'm also chair of the Energy Advisory Committee. We haven't taken a vote yet, but I'm pretty sure that the advisory committee would vote to update the governance structure. As you can see on the second blue box, the potential future state would be to consolidate the 3 committees into one, have maybe 4 subcommittees. This is just, hypothetical. These are the 4 subcommittees that we ended up working with in our group to collect data and information. It worked pretty well. It aligns with what people were comfortable with, what their expertise is in, what they're interested in. So that might be a good recommendation in the future to support a consolidated governance structure. 2025 budget, just a shot in the dark right now. If we were able to get the Mass Save grant, these numbers are a little stale. I was thinking we might want to share that resource with a different town. After talking with the Mass Save representatives, they actually are recommending Canton go at it on their own. So that would be 120 instead of the 60,000 you see there, and it would be funded through a grant for 3 years. The annual town approval, I think, for a budget, I think is what we need approval for. Roughly $50,000 that would help to pay for the computer for the staff member if they are hired and we get the grant. That could go for marketing communications. It could go for potential, a lot of these grants have a town match that's required to get support for the town. They want to see some, skin in the game, so they want the town to do a match. That would be a possibility to put into that budget. And then there's also, as you may recall, the Canton Electricity Choice program has a possible adder that we could put in place to fund energy-related activities that would be consistent with the law and the regulation and the climate action plan. Very preliminary. I will talk to Mr. Scollins about that, but as you can see, it's not a lot of money at this point for any major capital improvements or anything like that. So again, a few questions down at the bottom for you to consider, and we'll raise those back on the 17th. This is an MVP 2.0 grant. I guess this is the closest question I have for your approval or authorization to move forward. It's a really nice grant opportunity for the town. What it essentially would do is help fund a third party to come in and help build capacity in Canton to support the development of a more climate equitable and inclusive programming for at-risk, vulnerable communities in our environmental justice community. It's been my experience over the last couple of years doing a couple of these programs. We could use some help developing our outreach and our engagement with our vulnerable populations around energy and environmental issues. And this grant would help build that capacity. At some point, the town's going to have to do this in order to continue to qualify for action grants that we've taken a lot of advantage of in the past. So I'm not sure, Mr. Chair, I need your permission to move forward with that or not. If you're okay with the concept, I can work with town planner and we can develop pretty quickly the application to do this. I think we can meet the deadline. We've applied for this grant earlier in a pilot program and we didn't get it. So we have a lot of the materials necessary to support this new application. The reason why we didn't get it is because it was very competitive and they were looking for communities with a different demographic than Canton has. So I'll pause on that one, Mr. Chair. And do you think this is something that would require at least authorization from the select board to move forward, or a nod, and I can work with the town administrator and the town planner to see if we can do this?
Thank you, Mr. Birmingham. So before we go further, is there any questions from the board on what Mr. Birmingham's presented so far? Right.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah. So as Mr. Birmingham said, he's going to send an updated presentation to the board. And if you notice that there were questions throughout the presentation, specifically for the select board. So I certainly would encourage the board to go through that presentation very carefully and be ready to discuss that at the next meeting. So, Mr. Birmingham, who will manage that grant? Is that going to be managed by the town planner, or who would manage that?
In talking to the town planner, he needs to know if that's a priority for him or not. As we've done in the past, the committee itself could work closely with the town planner, but the town planner would definitely be the point person to administer the grant itself. What it does is it provides funding to hire a third party. So the actual lift on the town planner is certainly a lot lighter than it would be without that. That's what the funding really is for, to bring in an expert to help us do that. So I think it's doable, subject to his prioritization. And what my understanding from my conversation with him is, he told me that if you think this is worthy, he will prioritize it, subject to town administrator and the work that he needs done as well.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like he could get it done if we wanted him to get it done. All right. So what is the will of the board? Ms. Boyden?
Yeah, Chair. It seems like a no-brainer to me to pursue this and pursue those grants. And Tom, my only concern is it's like next week, 12/4, for that first grant, like that one you just ended the slideshow with. So good luck with that. I hope we get it.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
A question through you to Charlie, the administrator, our administrator. Is the planner, what is his availability to do this? Is he said, right from over here, but we haven't heard directly from him, so I'm curious. Have you talked to him, Charlie?
I have not talked to the planner about this specific grant. But Tom, I think, has indicated that he's willing to do it should the board want to proceed. So I'm not quite sure what management of that grant will entail. I haven't spoken to him in detail about it as of yet.
Mr. Chair, that would be my only concern, that it becomes an issue with the planner, but hard to make a decision without talking to the planner.
So I don't believe that the select board needs to take a vote on this, but we could certainly give the town administrator the will of the board. To Ms. Boyden's point, it's not a lot of time. I think the 4th is next, Wednesday?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Why don't I reach out to the town planner tomorrow and
Yeah.
just get his take on it? If he's willing to do it and he thinks he has the capacity to do it, then I don't see an issue.
Yeah, my only concern is what is he working on that, goes to
Right.
the back burner. So
Right.
if he can fit it in, I think we're good to go. Because it's we do need to have an expert to help guide us. Mr. Birmingham's only so good. Only has so much time. Tom, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Duty. If it helps, I can share with you and town planner the application we made under the pilot for this grant last year. Mr. Manning was the interim planner at the time. So Mr. Torres may not be as familiar with the application requirements, but as I said, we've taken a swing at it, and I've looked at the template, and it's doable if we want to coordinate and support that. I'm happy to help with that.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Birmingham.
Sure.
Tom, what if the grant were awarded? What's the commitment? What's the time commitment? What are the requirements of the town to fulfill that grant? Is this something that the Climate Action Plan Committee would support the town planner in implementing, i.e., helping, search for a vendor to come help with the details of the grant?
Yeah, I can't speak on behalf of the full committee, but I know a few of us have talked about this, and we would definitely be supportive of doing that. I do think the town would really benefit from this type of grant. I've met a couple of people that would be potential candidates to fulfill the grant applicants. And it's what I'm seeing longer term, why this is important. As I mentioned, the town's going to have to do this eventually anyway. And we could really use the increasing capacity and expertise that this grant provides us. A lot of the future grants that we would be requesting from the state, their expectation is that these are going to be equitable, inclusive, supportive of our environmental justice communities as well as our vulnerable population. So it's becoming more and more important to the state to see this capacity within the towns.
Ms. Boyden.
Tom, so you say we get it in next Wednesday. When will we find out if we get the grant?
Usually within 30, 40 days or so.
Okay.
All right, so why don't we instruct the town administrator to follow up with the town planner on the grant of the details, and if he can fit it in, we apply.
We'll do it.
Okay. Anything else,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Birmingham?
Thank you very much. I know this was a lot to digest, and I'm open anytime if you all are reading this and you want to have a sidebar, we can break it down. I'm happy to take that time to make sure you all are comfortable and understand what we're asking for. And I look forward to presenting again in front of you on the 17th.
All right, we will see you on the 17th. Thank you, Mr. Birmingham.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy
Have a good
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
All right, Mr. Albert.
All right, next up, we have Mr. Scollin should be coming back in, and we're gonna consider the approval to reallocate the uncommitted opera funds. And Randy should be here. I thought I just saw his name pop up a minute ago.
Yeah. Yep.
Great.
Yes, hello.
There it is.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties with the machine here. I'm going to share my screen. That's okay.
Yes, sir.
One pager.
I like that.
Sorry, I was just communicating with Lewis. I'm having all kinds of issues here with my machine. Apologize.
Was the opera request for a new computer?
Well, this one's only 5 years old, so I'm hoping to get another couple of years out of it. As the deadline of December 31st approaches regarding the required contractual obligation date for ARPA funds, the town has $339,824.49 of funds remaining for previously approved projects by the select board, which are listed here. Since these funds are no longer needed for the associated projects, the select board is being asked to vote on a reallocation of these remaining funds for 14 other expenditure purposes also listed on the attachment. The ARPA requirements for these funds are that they be spent on any legal municipal purpose following federal procurement laws and contractually obligated by December 31st of 2024. Again, these were funds that the town received directly, so we had no restrictions on them, unlike the funds received through Norfolk County. The attached document recommended list was developed by the town administrator and his staff, and given the short time frame to have each of these items under contract by December 31st, we focused on what I would call shovel-ready projects that would not have a long or complicated procurement process. Some of the items are continuations or add-ons to existing contracts. Some are items that have come up this fiscal year that are not anticipated or funded expenses. 6 of the items are technology related. 1 is related to the recently executed trash contract that was above this year's budget. 1 is related to human resources initiatives One is related to required payments to property owners for easements related to the Revere Court project, and the remainder are smaller purchases that were not planned for. And I'm happy to take any questions on what is listed here in the ask.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Scollins. So, are there questions on the board?
Wait.
Yep.
Chairs. Just a quickie question. So can you just give me a 10-second recap on why we're not doing the pickleball courts? One of my friends asked me to ask you.
So, I can answer that, Ms. Boyden.
Okay.
The cost for that project, is $600-something thousand.
Okay.
And we don't have the balance of that. So the pickleball courts is still very much a project that the town wants to do. But we needed to spend this money by the end of the year, and we don't have the other funding secured for the pickleball. So that's why the project's deferred.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so if there are no questions, do we have a motion for, yep, Mr. Scollins?
Mr. Chair, yep, just one point. The last item listed here for $12,000 is the programming costs that our financial system provider, Munis, would charge to have us add in a stormwater fee to the utility bills. So this is a request in anticipation that the select board may vote to add a stormwater fee to utility bills in the next fiscal year. So if that, if the board contemplates that that's the likely action, I would leave it on the list. But if it's likely that we won't be adding a stormwater fee to utility bills for whatever reason in 26, then I would take it off.
So if you took it off, do you have another project that you would put that money towards?
That entire amount could then go to the project above it, the new sign trailer, which is a $20,000 project.
Okay. Let's leave it because I think we'll make that decision at one of the next meetings regarding stormwater. So I'm okay to leave that.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. If no additional questions for Mr. Scollins, is there a motion?
Yep. I move that the board, that the town of Canton, I move that the town of Canton opera funds be reallocated as presented on the reallocation of town opera fund schedule presented tonight.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Albert?
Yes.
Ms. Boyden?
Yes.
Mr. McCourt?
Yes.
Chair as well, 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Collins. Is that it for you,
Ready.
sir? All right. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you. All right, next, Mr. Albert.
Thank you all.
All right, so next, I move that the board approve the personal service contract for the finance director.
Okay.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Duty, do you have a comment on this at all? It's just staying in line with all the other personal contracts that have been.
Yeah, I would defer to our HR director, Jody Middleton, on this one.
Okay, Ms. Middleton, did you have any input on this?
I don't have any additional comments. It is very consistent with all the personal service contracts that you have signed. The COLAs are consistent with the past contracts, and there's no additional language outside of all the other ones that you have signed.
Okay. Do you have any questions for our HR director? Hearing none, I had a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And Trish, did you vote? Are you frozen?
Yes. Do you not hear me?
No, I didn't, but now I did. All right,
Okay.
we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
the chair as well, 4-0.
Thank you very much, all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy, for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving to you.
All right, Next, Mr. Albert.
All right, next, Jody's still there. She's gonna update us on some personal board sick time policy.
Correct.
All right.
As you may have recalled, I have been working on updating all of our policies for non-union personnel board employees. That is taking a while. There are a lot of them, and there's different department heads I have to involve. But one, I saw an immediate need to be consistent with other policies out there, state and federal, and also our own Canton Public Schools policy is our to update the parental leave policy within the sick time policy. So it just amends that when somebody goes out on parental leave for the birth or adoption of a child, they are eligible to use up to 20 family sick time days. Right now, it's only a week. They do have to accrue. It is their own time that they are using. It's really their sick time, but it would be designated to care for a family member. So if they do go out on a paternity leave, parental leave, they can use 20 family sick days. So that is the recommendation that I am having you review. And then I'll come back next week to see if you vote on it.
Okay, perfect. So we're just reviewing it tonight.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay, and this is for all town employees? All union?
Non-union.
Non-union. So
Non-union
Mr. Albert
personnel.
and myself would be able to vote on this, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
Yes.
so we will take this under advisement, and we will address this at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
All right, next, Mr. Albert.
So next up, I move that the board approve the request from the CMEA for a donation of 3 personal days for the municipal employees to be raffled off at the annual Christmas party.
Second.
All right, so motion has been made and seconded. Jody, did you want to speak on this? I mean, I know what it is,
Did I
but
just watch something?
Right. I just want, for anybody listening out there, I just wanted to clarify what the CMEA is. It's called the Canton Municipal Employee Association. It is an association that employees of the town, they do through payroll deductions, they do pay in to this fund. So no town funds are used to fund the holiday party or any events that we put on for employees. I just want to make that known that we do hold an annual holiday party, but the town residents do not fund this. It is all employee funded. So one of our biggest events is the holiday party, and how we raise money, additional money outside of payroll deductions, are raffles. And we do come every year and ask that the select board do donate 3 personal days to be raffled off. You do have to be a full-time employee, and you can only win 1 day. So one person, even if they put all their tickets in there, they're only eligible to win 1, so we can spread it around.
got it. Perfect. All right. So any questions for our HR director? All right, hearing none, Mr. Albert.
I move that the board approve the request from the CMEA for donation of 3 personal days for the municipal employees to be raffled off at their Christmas party.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes,
chair as well, 4-0. Next, Mr. Albert.
All right, I move that the board approve the $50,000 grant from the Housing Choice Grant Program to support the Gridley School redevelopment study to be managed under the planning department.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I will do a roll call vote. Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
yes,
chair as well, 4-0. Mr.
Next, I move that the board approve the $150,000 grant from the Department of Mental Health Jail/Arrest Diversion Program for a response grant for the police department.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Roll call vote, Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
yes,
The chair as well, 4-0. And just on a side note, that program is a fantastic program and has helped a lot of people. So I'm glad to see the police department and the Department of Mental Health working on that. All right, next, Mr.
All
Albert.
right, next, I move that the board accept and authorize the use of the gift in accordance with the terms thereof under Mass General Law 44 subsection 53A, a donation of $1,000 from Chestnut Hill Realty for the fire department.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Roll call vote, Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
the chair as well, 4-0. Next, Mr. Albert.
So next, I move that the board accepting and authorizing the use of, in accordance with the terms under Mass General Law 44 subsection 53A, a donation of $1,000 from Kathleen Zeminski for the Department of Elder and Human Services.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
chair as well, 4-0. Next, Mr. Albert.
Next, I move that the board accept and authorize the use of the gift in accordance with the terms thereof under Mass General Law 44 subsection 53A to the following donations to the police department. 15 $20 Dunkin' Donut gift cards from the Fountain of Grace and $1,000 from Chestnut Hill Realty.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Roll call vote, Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
and the chair as well, 4-0.
Okay,
Mr.
next,
Duke,
I
you
move
can
that-
make sure we get thank you cards out to those individuals. All right, next, Mr. Albert.
You get a couple hands up there. I don't know if.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Duty?
I defer to Ms. Boyden first.
Ms. Boyden?
Here, I have a quickie question. Why is Chestnut Hill Realty giving us stuff? Do you know? I mean, did we do them a favor? It was very nice of them.
I can
So-
answer.
Yeah, thanks.
So Chestnut Hill Properties, we haven't done anything. Well, you know, we clearly provide services to their apartment buildings and all, but they've been donating to the fire department in particular for well over 10 years. So it's an annual donation, as you know, several companies do in town, as an appreciation for the services that they get.
Thanks, Charlie.
All right,
And then
and then Mr. Duty, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
Mr. Chair, on this next agenda item, for consider the use of mitigation, I believe we can withdraw that because the reallocation of the opera funds was for that amount for the
Oh,
light.
okay,
Okay, so I think we can withdraw that.
okay.
All right, so next up, I move that the select board authorize the stormwater manager to proceed with the development of stormwater utility rules and regulation. Further, once finalized, the stormwater utility rules and regulation shall be presented to the select board at a future meeting for vote of our approval.
I second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Roll call vote, Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
the chair as well, 4-0.
All right, so next up I have the vendor warrants and the payroll warrants. The first one, the vendor warrant total for the week of 11/14/2024, $2,072,593.54. The payroll warrant for the week of 11/14/2024, $1,934,245.67. The vendor warrant total for the week of 11/21/24, $1,683,301.56. Okay, next, I move that the board approve the water and sewer commitment residential rate, residential in the amount of $3,744,413.38.
Second.
Motion has been made and
sorry.
seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Roll call vote, Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
the chair as well, 4-0. Next, Mr. Albert.
Okay, next, I move that the board approve the water and sewer commitment final bills in the amount of $2,846.49.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Roll call vote. Mr. Albert,
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
Chair 4-0.
Okay, next up is the town administrator update. Mr. Duty?
Yes, sir. Just a few things. First thing is, on Saturday, I attended the Serenity Garden dedication on the front lawn of the William Armando Recreation Center on Pleasant Street, with Chair Loughran, was there as well and spoke. Special thanks to the community club for fundraising through the sale of the engraved bricks, the granite benches, and the trees to make the Serenity Garden a reality. Special thank you to the DPW staff who, painstakingly built the patio literally brick by brick, brick by engraved brick. So they did a great job. So it came out really nice. So it was a nice project that finally came to completion. On Sunday, had the pleasure of attending the annual Thanksgiving Interfaith service at the First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church on Washington Street. Wonderful service, people of many faiths represented, amazing music. Donations were offered in support of the Canton Food Pantry, and for those interested in seeing it, it will be rebroadcast on Canton Community Television, just probably in the next couple of weeks. Rabbi Mendy Horowitz of the Chai Center of Canton wanted to invite you all and our residents to the annual menorah lighting. This happens across the street from Town Hall. It's going to be held on the fourth night of Hanukkah, Saturday, December 28th at 6:30 p.m. The menorah is a symbol of light and religious freedom, and the community is encouraged to attend. MBTA parking lot update. If you recall, a couple of meetings ago, I announced some closures of the parking lot at the Canton Junction. The weather has interrupted that schedule, so they have new closure dates. The parking lot will now be closed at 8 p.m. on December 4th and reopening on December 6th. So, the original dates were, I think, for this week, so that's pushed off another week. The other thing is there's early in-person voting for the December 10th election for the Galvin Middle School. You can check the town clerk's website for details on the dates for early in-person voting. I don't have them at my fingertips right now, but it'll be on the clerk's website.
Thank you, Mr. Duty.
And finally, I just want to wish the board and our meeting attendees and our residents a happy Thanksgiving. I hope everyone has a chance to spend some time with family and friends and be grateful for all we have.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Duty. So if I could just piggyback on the town administrator. So just to clarify, at special town meeting, the middle school project passed, but what that was to appropriate the money. So the ballot question on December 10th is whether or not the town wants to proceed with this project. So it's a little backwards, chicken before the egg, but that is the process. So just reminding residents that if you wanted the middle school project, you still need to go out and vote in favor of it. Special town meeting was just to appropriate the money for it, but we still need to vote that in order to be successful. So, all right. Anything else, Mr. Albert?
Yep. Well, so the select board will hold its next meeting on Tuesday, December 3rd, 2024, 7 p.m. remotely via Zoom. Excuse me. And having said that, do you have anything else, Mr. Loughran?
No, any other announcements from the board? All right, so
So I
to
make a
piggyback
motion-
again on Mr. Duty, just happy Thanksgiving to all, to my fellow board members and to the community.
You too, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. You, same to all of you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Albert.
I make a motion that we end our meeting tonight at 9:10. That's it.
Second.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Albert, roll call vote.
Yes.
Ms. Boyden,
Yes.
Mr. McCourt,
Yes.
and the chair as well, 4-0. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving,
everybody.
Take care.
Good night.